few more questions tonight. Dear Ajahn, I have a song continually playing in my head. If I let it be, it just goes on and on. Should I try to stop it? Well, you probably find you can't stop it, even if you try. It's probably a sign of your character. Some people like music, they incline, their mind enjoys songs, music. Some people are more visual, they like art. So it's just a memory coming up, and you're seeing how strong an impression that memory made on the mind at the time. Maybe it's associated with other things, other events, time in your life. But if you don't give it any importance, even if you can't stop it now, but you're not giving it importance, you're not indulging it, you're not holding on to it, you'll find gradually it disappears, for sure. Because I think most of us have had the same problem. I'm sure most of the monks have, many of you will. Many of us used to be musicians, so many songs, pieces of music that pop up. I used to be a musician. I can still remember music, but it doesn't normally pop up into my head. It just disappeared. But that's after being a monk 31 years. The first few years as a monk, lots of songs, music come up. So you just have to be patient, and if you're determined, you'll find you can let it go. You talked at lunchtime that our feeling is the result of past karma. Please, can you say something in more detail on how to reduce or stop feeling negatively about the past? You also mentioned thinking meditation. How would we transfer thinking to practicing meditation? You have explained enough on this. Please reinforce us if you have time. Well, as you said, feeling is the result of past karma. Good, bad, indifferent feeling comes up, generated by what actions we've done before. If it's feeling pain, unhappiness associated with the past, well, again, you're giving importance to it in your mind when either the memory of something comes and you get a painful feeling, and you're holding on, giving importance, keep lingering on it, dwelling on it, clinging to it. You have to teach yourself to let go, remind yourself to let go and accept whatever has happened in the past has happened. It's finished, it's over. You can't change it. Now you're receiving the results of it. You can remember things and you might have painful feelings with those memories, but if you don't create more pain out of them in the present, they will naturally start to fade. So how do you not create more feeling in the present? Well, be mindful. Know a memory as a memory. Oh, this is a memory. Know the painful feeling. Accept it. This is the pain of separation, the pain of some trauma or some unpleasant thing you can remember. and have metta for yourself, wish yourself well. If it's involved with someone else, wish them well, and keep doing this. And don't cling to the pain, don't blame anyone. It's time to give up blaming, it's time to accept it and just move on. And if you keep doing that with mindfulness, well, it will get better, the pain will get less. The thinking meditation, well, we were talking about vipassana. So in Thailand we have this phrase, vipassanuk, which means thinking vipassana. And most of us start like that. You read the books, you hear the talks, and they say, contemplate feeling, for instance. See it as anicca, dukkha, anatta, the three characteristics. So basically, in the beginning, you're just telling yourself, oh, it's impermanent, this feeling is impermanent. But your mind is not yet still. You're still chattering away to yourself, reminding yourself, telling yourself, remembering Dhamma teachings. And that's okay, we all start like that. But your aim is to get to the point where you have good, solid mindfulness. You're knowing your mind, your body from moment to moment, and you improve that through your meditation practice. And as the mindfulness comes up, the verbalization, the concepts, the talking about vipassana gets less, and you're seeing these things as they are. You're seeing the impermanence of feeling arising, ceasing, and you can see it. You know it. The more you know it, the more you get the separation between the mind and the feeling, or the mind and the memory. So in the end, you don't have to think or talk. The stillness of the mind with mindfulness means you can just know anicca, know dukkha, know anatta. That's ultimately what we're aiming for. We get to the point where the mind is just empty of self. It's spacious, still, spacious, and even though things come up into it, you don't attach to them, you just see them as not self, you see through them. The craving and the attachment, the grasping at the pain or the pleasure, at the thoughts, at the feelings, it doesn't happen anymore because you're seeing these things as impermanent. You're seeing them, that you don't own them. They're just experiences of the mind, arising, ceasing. They're there, but the mind doesn't grasp at them. So it stays with this feeling of emptiness. So everything keeps dropping away. We say it goes to cessation. You're noticing the cessation, the ending of everything. Physical and mental sensations, thoughts. This is because mindfulness is so strong, nothing can shake it, nothing overwhelms it. It's continuous, so there's a sense of firmness, stillness. So everything else is seen in its true light as impermanent, it's not self. So one monk, Luang Por Phut, used to describe it about how when your mindfulness becomes so continuous through your day, through your practice, the mind becomes so bright, you see everything clearly. Even in the middle of the night, it's as if the lights are on, and you know every aspect of your own five khandhas as they are arising and ceasing, and you see them. And they can't influence the mind, make greed or anger or delusion arise, because you're seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta, you're knowing that all the time. And he said it's like, in those days in Thailand we didn't have so much electricity, so when we have an evening meeting we'd have a gas lantern, one of those gas lanterns, very bright, hot ball of flame from the gas. But because it's in the jungle, you'd get little bugs flying in all the time. There's nothing much you could do, like we'd put a net around, but still they'd keep coming in, and as soon as they hit the flame, they die, and they just drop to the ground. There's not much you could do about it. He said your mind is like that. With the power of mindfulness, whatever sense object, memory, feeling comes in, it just kind of drops to the ground. It doesn't affect the mind. It's seeing anicca, dukkha, anatta, just seeing it, knowing it. You're not not thinking about it and theorizing and saying, maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that. You just know it instantly, automatically. So we're practicing improving our mindfulness, reflecting on Dhamma till we get to that point. And obviously it comes through repeated practice. Yeah, you could say upekkha, yeah. You maintain your upekkha, whatever's coming at you, as it were. Dear Ajahn, when meditating well, I observe the aggregates as they are without self. But I find it hard to achieve this state when interacting with other people. When speaking to someone else, we use names and pronouns such as I, me, you, us, them, all denoting a self. How can we be free of a self when we speak and interact with other people? Carry on practicing mindfulness and get to that point where your mind is not so stuck on the verbalizations and the concepts and what we call the appearance of things, the labels, the concepts and ideas which we use. They're useful. We need language to talk to each other, to teach Dhamma and to live in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when your mindfulness becomes strong, you're obviously seeing beyond the language and the labels. So you can still use the word I, me or you, but you're not believing it anymore as a fixed, solid thing. You're just not using it as a skillful convention to communicate. So you say, I come here, I go there. But at the same time, your mindfulness, when it's well trained, and your insight into the three characteristics, at the same time as saying, I go here, you know there's no one going there. Just collection of four elements, earth, air, fire, water. Just mind, just five khandhas, going about business according to karma, according to what we're doing, our duties. But there's a sense of not self all the time. The awareness of that, the emptiness of self is very profound. But you still can use the word I, it's all right. Ajahn Sumedho likes to joke about this, like one meditator tried to understand anatta by just never talking about I, me, you, just cut out those words. And they'd go around having real trouble trying to talk to anyone, because they're sort of, it makes life very difficult if you cut those words out. But it's, they're just trying to do it through their verbalization, and that's not real insight, is it? It's just trying to make kind of cut and paste, get rid of the I's, and then carry on talking. It just makes life difficult. So on a normal level of interaction, you use the word I and the concept of I. We say, I am the owner of my karma. That's a useful way to think, isn't it? There's this set of khandhas here. We make karma with good intentions, make karma with bad intentions. We, I, me, I receive the fruits of my karma. And in the beginning of practice, that's a very useful way to talk and to think. We keep precepts, so we say, I keep this precept. I didn't keep this precept, I did. I meditate, I sit down, I watch my breath. I didn't watch my breath. We can use the concept of I and self up to a certain level, and it's very helpful. But then we go beyond it when mindfulness becomes sustained, and you're contemplating anicca sanya, and you're just seeing everything drop away, thoughts drop away, feelings arise, pass away, contemplating this body and seeing this body as not self. You get to a point where the labels don't matter so much. You can use them or not use them as you wish, but your mind is just knowing and seeing the truth. And the labels and the language are not an issue. They don't matter. You can use them skillfully to teach. Even the Buddha used the words I, me, you, but he saw beyond them to the ultimate truth. And there was no confusion in his mind, no delusion there. can you please give some details about one of the about the 4 statues of the monks in the meditation hall? So, for those of you who don't know, over there on, what is it, my left, you're looking at me, that's Lumpur Tuat. All the Thai people know of Lumpur Tuat. Even though he lived, I think maybe 250 to 300 years ago, he's still a household name in Thailand. Everyone's heard of Lumpur Tuat, a great monk, great enlightened monk. We even have some of his history written down, stories, legends about him, which, if you think about it, is amazing. We don't know that much about, in other figures in society, politicians, sports stars, movie stars, whatever, or even religious figures. Often we don't have much detail, but Lumpur Tuat is so loved and respected in Thailand. He's a household name, and that's perhaps a reflection of his great merit, his great barami. And the legend is that he is a bodhisattva, destined to become Maitreya Buddha, the next Buddha. In one life he appeared as Lumpur Tuat, and there's many amazing stories of how he helped people cure illnesses, taught the Dhamma, revived Buddhism in Thailand, taught monks, taught lay people. So he's a very special monk who I've always known about since my first year as a monk, always respected, been inspired by, and many others have as well. So when we built the monastery, there were many people wanted to make a statue of Lumpur Tuat, so we made one in Thailand and brought it here. The next monk, Somdet Buddhajanto, lived a bit more recently, maybe 150 years ago, and again, very famous. Everyone in Thailand knows his name, Somdet Do. He's very famous for amulets he made and blessed, distributed to people for them to remember the Buddha by. Very sought after, because the power of his blessing is just, everyone trusts, or if you have one of his amulets, it'll save the day, it'll bring you happiness, success. It's something people really revere. And then again, many stories of his life, teaching Dhamma to monks. Famous stories about teaching the king of Thailand at the time, Rama V, teaching him Buddhism, to be a good Buddhist, to be a good Buddhist king. So obviously very influential at that time. And he had a good sense of humour, so people remember some of his stories, anecdotes, reflections. It was often very simple situations that he turned into Dhamma teaching. So, for example, he was also a monk who would go off into the forest, travelling sometimes, just wandering, as well as living in big city temples and being very having an important role in the Buddhist society, the Buddhist hierarchy. He also would go out to the forests and live very simply. So like maybe sometimes he'd be walking through the forest and find a hunter's trap with an animal caught in it, not dead yet, just its leg is caught in this clamp. Out of compassion, he'd remove the animal, let it go. But then as a monk, that might be considered stealing. The hunter would think, oh, you've stolen that animal that I've trapped. So putting the trap around his own leg and just sitting there, meditating, waiting for the hunter to come back. Don't know how long it'll take, maybe an hour, 2 hours. Eventually the hunter comes back and sort of says, what are you doing there? And he explains, well, I let this animal go, but now you've got me, you can have me. And the hunter, of course, goes, oh, no, don't worry, I can't have you, I'll let you go. There's simple little situations like that where he teaches Dhamma to somebody. So he could teach, a humble villager, or he could teach the king. Teach the king not to get drunk, teach the king not to be too cruel to his citizens, all kinds of useful things he did. So that's Somdet Do. This one over here is Ajahn Mun, who was one of the teachers of Ajahn Chah, and is very much considered the sort of grandfather, most influential monk in the Thai forest tradition in the modern era. Spent his life just wandering through the forests, often didn't stay in one place very long, maybe just for a season, then move on. So it's very difficult to track down sometimes, because in those days there's no telephones or internet. So often people just had an idea where he was. So even Ajahn Chah, when he went to find Ajahn Mun, just to receive some teachings, he had to walk for many days and weeks. And that's how monks lived in those days. Often they lived in different forests, and they want to go and see the teacher, they have to walk. And they ask people, where's Lumpur Mun? Oh, I think he's over there. And they go off to another village. Oh, he was there last week. He's moved over there. And they just walk and walk, spend days looking for the teacher. Sometimes, like Lumpur Tate, another great teacher, a disciple of Ajahn Mun, he had a Dhamma question. So it wasn't like this, write it on a bit of paper and Ajahn reads it out. Got his things together, started walking, had to walk 2 weeks to find Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun's in the forest. They said, oh, Lumpur Tan Tate, you've come. Ajahn Tate asks this question, gives him an answer, off you go, straight back again, another 2 weeks back. One question, 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks back, a whole month just for one question. So he's very much revered for teaching the Dhamma at every level, up to the level of Arahata. So many great teachers were indebted to him for helping on some of the most refined Dhamma points, sometimes overcoming attachment to samadhi and the bliss of samadhi, helping them to see that pointed out when no one else could, or they couldn't themselves. Teaching them to contemplate, sometimes being very firm, so you've got to contemplate like this. So like Lumpur Tate used to have very good samadhi. Very easily he would enter jhana from the day one, right? Not like us sitting, struggling just to get a bit of peace. As soon as he ordained, he was getting jhana, very peaceful. So peaceful that he wasn't contemplating as much as Ajahn Mun thought he should. So when he saw Ajahn Mun said, don't enter jhana, contemplate the body. Practice your mindfulness of the body. You really familiarize yourself with the body. And Ajahn Tate said, oh, that completely changed his whole practice. He stopped enjoying the bliss of samadhi and jhana. He spent all his time in a lesser state of samadhi, but just contemplating the impermanence, the unattractiveness of the body. And he said that all the Four Noble Truths came out of that practice, contemplating the body. It's quite an important point, isn't it? Because most people think, oh, I wish I had jhanas, and I wish I had deep samadhi and bliss and psychic powers and could fly through the air and all these things. And Ajahn Tate said, no, that wasn't the practice. The practice was actually contemplating the breath, the 4 elements, the 32 parts, the 10 corpse meditations, all the stuff we don't want to do. He said that's what brought him enlightenment. Very important, and it's because of Ajahn Mun that we have that story, that recollection. So many monks are indebted to him, remember him with great love, and then they pass that love and respect on to their disciples, students, monks and lay people. So again, he's known throughout Thailand, and you can read his biography. I imagine many of you have. The last one, well, need I say, Lumpur Cha. It's quite understandable that we have a statue of Lumpur Cha here. When I first ordained, I ordained in his monastery. He was too ill to ordain me, but he was still there. And I lived about 7 years close by to him, either in his monastery or with his disciples, helping to nurse him for many years, over and over again, like month after month. I'd spend a lot of time nursing him and practicing at the same time, translating his books, receiving teachings. So I personally have a very strong connection with him, I feel. And obviously other monks who come here, many of them are direct disciples of Ajahn Chah. We're in his Sangha, so as you know, every year, in a few weeks I go to Thailand in January, usually in June and January, for meetings to remember Ajahn Chah and to meet the living disciples of Ajahn Chah. And we just, we kind of keep the practice going partly through that. He encouraged the Sangha to meet together and to upkeep the same kind of practice, the same standard of practice that they did in his day. So they say Ajahn Chah lives on through the Sangha. So one of the strange things, most teachers when they die, the Sangha tends to shrink, become smaller because the teacher gradually gets forgotten. But Ajahn Chah died 24 years ago. This retreat, we're commemorating Ajahn Chah's passing away 24 years ago. The Sangha of Ajahn Chah is much, much bigger now than even when he was alive. More monks, more nuns, more lay people know him around the world. His teachings have been translated to, 30 or 40 different languages. Everybody knows him. Most people probably might say he's the most well-known Thai national outside of Thailand, because he's known all over the world. So his influence on many of the monks, and maybe even you, has been quite profound. So we have a statue there to remind us of him. And all these statues have been blessed. When they were made, they had a big ceremony. Many senior enlightened monks came to help bless them. So hopefully they got a bit of energy in them as well with them, and they brought that energy here. There's both the recollection of their teachings, their example, how they lived, and then even, like sometimes people have come here and meditated and opened their eyes and they just see a bright light. So like from Ajahn Chah, one meditator just saw this gold light coming out of Ajahn Chah. And they're not someone that easily fools. They said, "Did I really see that?" They came and asked me. I said, "Oh yeah, it's quite possible." When the mind is peaceful, you just see the barami, the aura of Ajahn Chah, rather than the physical statue. Sometimes people have that experience. Ajahn, why is the consumption of meat acceptable in Buddhism? Doesn't it contradict loving kindness towards animals? We get this question every year. Obviously not everybody is vegetarian in the world. So does that mean we don't let them practice Buddhism? If you go home, your mum cooks you a nice, fry up with bacon and sausages and things, do you say, "No, I'm Buddhist, I'm not eating this"? And sometimes we accept food from our relatives and friends who aren't vegetarian, and that's okay. Obviously, where the Buddha drew the line, the first precept, we undertake not to kill. So Buddhism, the whole teaching is based around metta. Metta, Brahmavihara, non-aggression, non-killing. But he's also practical. He has wisdom, and he knows some of the societies that the Buddhist teachings have travelled into haven't been vegetarian societies. If he made it some kind of compulsory practice to be a vegetarian, then maybe many people wouldn't have the chance to practice or hear the teachings. So even monks are allowed to eat meat as long as we don't know or suspect that it's been killed for us. Obviously, if somebody is planning to kill something, we would say, "No, don't eat that." Or if we suspect, yesterday they caught a fish just to cook for us, we have to refuse it. But if it's just food they bought in a supermarket or somewhere, it's not considered breaking the precept to buy meat, cook it, give it to a monk or to yourself or to someone else. So there's a line we draw here, and it's the intention. If there's no intention to kill, then it's not breaking the precept, not necessarily making any negative karma in that action of buying meat, cooking it. But if you choose out of your practice of kindness and compassion to be a vegetarian, well, that can be a very good thing. And it can promote that and encourage others to do it as well. Well, that can be a good thing. But we have to be clear on where, how the Buddha taught and how karma is made, what is negative karma or not. And just the act of eating meat is not yet bad karma as such. Dear Ajahn, I keep the 5 precepts very carefully, but during retreats I start recalling past occasions when I am doubtful whether I have broken precepts. This sense of doubt and guilt disturbs the mind for many days. Logically, I know I haven't broken precepts in most cases. However, I find myself anxious, my intention a lot, analyzing my intention a lot to understand if I have broken precepts. Please advise how to deal with doubt and guilt arising when we try to keep strict morality. Well, mindfulness helps, because when you're practicing mindfulness, you're centering your awareness in the present moment. You bring up mindfulness, so if a memory rises, the first thing you know, it's a memory. And for some people that's enough. They just know this is a memory, even a bad memory, unpleasant memory of something we did before. It's a memory. It may no longer be your intention to do that thing. So you can drop it, you let it go. We have to practice being mindful enough to do that. So we know a memory is a memory, a good memory, a bad memory. We can learn from it when it comes up. It reminds us, oh, I shouldn't do that, because it brings up regret. It caused me suffering, caused someone else suffering. So you can learn from your memories, the good ones, the bad ones, but then you have to move on and drop them. And the way you change your karma is by making your fresh determination. From now on, I won't kill, I won't steal, I won't abuse people, I won't drink, whatever it is. And you're making your fresh intention. Little by little, the sense of well-being that comes from keeping the precepts in the present moment with mindfulness day by day, that becomes strong. And the regret and the guilt about past action starts to fade, because you know you've changed. And you're not that same person anymore. You recognize what you did, but it's gone, finished. You're free. You may still have to receive some past karma results sometimes, if you have harmed others or done something. And you have to accept that. So you accept it with patience, with forgiveness, and you don't create fresh bad karma. If you are receiving the fruits of your old bad karma, you just have to be very patient, get through it. But you set your mind on keeping the precepts, making just good karma from now on. Little by little you'll find you can drop the past, and even a painful memory is just a memory. And it comes up, you know it, you let it go again. When we observe sensations, mental states or thoughts, is there a particular order we should follow. For example, for sensation, I observe from the top of the head to the feet, I guess. Could I just observe the strongest sensation when it comes up? However, for mental states, it might be continuous, something between one state to the other state. There are always gaps. When should I do between these gaps? Observe the void. What should I do between the gaps? Observe the void or go back to the breath? Also, mental states are always so another part of the question was also mental states are almost always attached to thoughts and feelings. When observing the come back. When observing the state, it is almost impossible to observe mental states alone. Should I be observing all of them together, since all of them arise and fall together? Finally, who is observing? Who is the one who observes the observer? Sorry for the essay question. So testing our eyesight and our reading ability. One of the things that happens as you practice mindfulness is it tends to you get the experience of breaking up or dissipating or diffusing what seemed to be like solid, big and continuous, starts to be spread out, broken up. So whether you're practicing mindfulness directed to the body, you start to see the body kind of breaking up into the 32 parts, 4 elements, sensations associated with the body, physical sensations. And there's this sense of separating, analyzing, breaking apart. And the sense of solidity, the wholeness of it, is being reduced all the time, the more you contemplate. And in the end you get to this point where the sense of self is gone and it's like that body is empty by doing this practice of breaking it apart, contemplating it into its components. You might break it down, build it up together again, but you're coming to the point where you see there's no self in it. It's just 4 elements. That's the body, and it's like that. With the mind, it's the same. With our mental activity, you're kind of breaking up this solid sense of self that identifies with every bit of mental activity. So one is the continuity, the endless story and the endless sense of one feeling, one mood, one thought coming onto another, one memory, all leading on one onto another, this endless kind of process. Mindfulness kind of starts to interrupt that a little bit and kind of pull the mind back so it's not grasping in it all and seeing it as all one big tangled mess. You start to separate things out a little bit and separate back, stand back from your mental experience. And that's peaceful. Obviously you're not getting involved so much in it. You don't feel so involved. You're watching, but you're not grasping at it and identifying with it. And you also start to notice distinct mental states arising, passing away, feelings that come with them rising, passing away. And that awareness of impermanence becomes more and more clear. And that gives you peace, gives you a sense of security where you're sort of looking, but you're not attached, and you know, oh, it will pass. So it's particularly with stressful, unpleasant mental experiences, memories, feelings, the one thing you know is it will pass, it doesn't last. They say that's the good news, it doesn't last. The bad news is the pleasure doesn't last either. So, pleasant feelings arise, oh, it's gone again. Eat my meal, oh, that was nice, finished. Meet my friend, have a nice conversation, oh, that was really nice, oh, finished. And you get to so clearly seeing, oh, pleasant experiences rising, passing away, unpleasant rising, passing away, and you're also starting to break them up. So there's the feeling, and it prompts thinking, proliferation. I mean, the feeling comes from sense contact, so you see, you hear, you taste. Then you get the feeling, then you get the thoughts coming. And if there's not much mindfulness or awareness, well, usually craving has hijacked your mind, so it's feeding a lot of thoughts. I really like this, and I want more of this, and oh, this is good. Or maybe it's an unpleasant experience. I don't like this, I want to get rid of this, I'm fed up with this. And craving is kind of fueled by memory, so it gives it all the details. So it gives you all the character players, so you know the names and the labels, and you remember all kinds of things, and you say, oh, it was like that, oh yes, I've got this again, this really good experience, and I had it before, and now I want it again, and in the future I want it even more. On you go. You got memory and feeling kind of feeding the whole thing, and then you get thought coming along, so you get what we call emotion, happiness, get really high, excited, blissful, anger, depression, disappointment. And with the practice of mindfulness, you're starting to separate all that out. So the Buddha called it all like this tangled mess. Big mess of like when you have a load of string all messed up together, or thread or something. And now you're untangling it by putting mindfulness there. You're seeing things arise, pass away. The mind's not grasping at it, it's not feeding it. So you see thoughts drifting off, and you're not building them up into anything, you're not creating anything out of them, you're not giving importance to them as you practice. You know them, but you're not building them up and making them very important in your mind. You just say, oh, it's like that, and then it drops away. And you get better at doing that. So there's this sense of dispersing the sort of solidity of your moods, your mental states, your emotions. It doesn't mean to say you're somehow trying to get rid of all emotion or something. You're just knowing it's impermanent. What's impermanent is not a self. You don't have to grasp at it as self. And you can use emotions. You know, we develop positive emotions like metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. We develop sila, so we become sensitive to how we react with other people, interact with the world. We develop positive emotions, we can use them, and they're still part of that whole process. There's a feeling, there's a memory, there's a thought. But when it's a wholesome mental state, it doesn't disturb the mind very much. It brings the mind a good feeling, helps the mind to feel more peaceful, more happy, can even bring us wisdom and understanding, and it leads to peace as a result. So when you practice meditation, you keep bringing up wholesome mental states. That's part of your effort. When the wholesome mental states keep coming up over and over again, well, you feel very good. So you feel relaxed, happy, your mind becomes calm. So you notice that. That's one of the attractions of practicing meditation. You feel calm, happy. Your mind has a sense of well-being. When you're caught into unwholesome mental states, obviously the good ones have gone at that time. No mindfulness, no wisdom, maybe no metta, no insight. The opposite, the mind is very shaky, very weak. It feels like it's just a victim or a prey to these mental states, so we often feel like very stressed, overwhelmed. The experience is different. So our job is to keep bringing up the wholesome mental states, the mindfulness, the wisdom, the metta, and the experience starts to level out a bit, and you feel more in control, more steady, You can look better, look more clearly, you can see impermanence, you can understand that more clearly because your mind becomes more wholesome and you feel better. So it's important to see this point. You have to keep putting effort into bringing up skillful mind states. These help you to look back at the mind itself and particularly to let go of the unskillful mind states and to know them. Oh, this is suffering, this is the cause of suffering. Very difficult when you're in just suffering and you've got no mindfulness, no insight. Well, you're just feeling that and there's nothing you can do, is there? You have to put effort into practice, bringing up the mindfulness. So that's why they say there's no such thing as a bad meditation. Even if you're sitting there and you're just miserable, but you're trying, a very valuable, powerful good karma when you're trying to bring up some mindfulness when you're feeling miserable, angry, full of revenge, bitter, bad memories, all the things we're talking about. You know, when that's going on and you feel, oh, I can't get rid of this, I just want it out of my mind, but it's not going. But the effort to bring up mindfulness, you're really going against your negative tendencies and habits there, and you're bringing up very strong, good, new habits. So if you keep doing that, it will get better and easier, and you'll learn a lot, even if at the time it feels like, oh, this is awful, I'm not getting anywhere. You are getting somewhere, it's just you're not seeing, the result you want, which is complete freedom, complete peace. You haven't achieved that yet. But if you keep going, you will. And this practicing through periods of suffering, very important, because otherwise we just run away from suffering. We don't bring up mindfulness, we don't contemplate, we just try and blot it out, suppress it, distract ourselves, and we never learn. So we're stuck in it, we keep getting stuck in it, and sometimes it gets worse. So, this is why the Buddha also, he talked about a human being as 5 khandhas: form, feeling, memory, thought formations, sense consciousness. He's helping us to see it's not all one solid thing. It's actually a number of different activities. There's the physical thing, and then there's the mental thing, and even the mental thing is broken up into different parts. With mindfulness, you keep bringing up mindfulness, that becomes more obvious to the mind. You see these different parts and you don't identify with them so strongly. So it's a relief to the mind. I can let go. I don't have to worry about this body so much. I don't have to get upset about every painful feeling. I don't have to worry about all these mental states coming and going. You just watch, oh, they're just doing their thing. They're just the 5 aggregates. And obviously, the quality of your thoughts, your mental states improves as you practice, but they're never going to completely go away. Like, don't fool yourself that you're aiming for some state where you never think. Thought is always going to be there because it's a khandha, it's a part of a human being, is you can think, you can remember. Like, don't fool yourself that somehow you'll be able to never remember any of the bad things you did in the past. Does that mean you want Alzheimer's? Memory is a function of the mind. We have to accept we can remember the good and the bad, but memory is just memory. If you're mindful of it, it's just a memory. So we have great examples in the time of the Buddha. We have monks like Angulimala. He killed 999 people. For sure he didn't forget that. He knew what he had done. But he also knew he did it out of delusion, not out of just blind hatred. He did it out of a wrong view that was imparted to him by his first teacher. When he met the Buddha taught him to practice like this, reflect on his behavior, change his actions, change his intentions, let go of his attachment to his wrong views. So he managed to become enlightened. But he's still got to live with the memory of having killed people, and then he has to live with the pain of all their relatives hating him. So they go into the village, he never got food, people would throw stones at him, the kids would throw sticks at him, shout at him, people would just spit at him. He'd go back to the monastery and the other monks would give him food because they knew he's an arahant and they wanted to help him, support him. But most of the lay people still just saw him as an ex-murderer, so they didn't have any respect for him. So he's living with that memory, but he's totally free from suffering. It's just like proof that you can have a bad memory, but you don't have to attach to it, you don't have to suffer with it. You just know, oh, that was that period of time, I behaved in that way, I don't behave that way anymore, I've seen through it. You can do that, and that's why we practice. If we couldn't do that, then we're stuck, aren't we? Oh, I've always got to be this way, I can't change. But you can change, and that's why we meditate. We're learning to change ourselves for the better, but you'll still have memory, you'll still think. Like going back to Luang Por Thep, we once asked Luang Por Thep, he said, so, does the Arahant still think? He said, yeah, the Arahant still thinks, but he chooses what to think about, when to think, how to think. He's got that freedom. He's not a slave to all these kind of endless negative mental states and stress and suffering. He'll think, he said, when he's not busy, just goes into samadhi. They call it vihara dhammas. It's just dwelling in emptiness, peace. Really, that's still a function of thought. The sankhara khandha is still operating, but there's no sense of self, no attachment. It's just a very peaceful mind state of the Arahant. Then, somebody comes, asks him a Dhamma question or something, okay, starts to think, what is this question? What does this person need? What answer do they need? So he can think, he can verbalize, he can form an answer, he can speak, he can make decisions, choices. When there's no need to do that, go back to emptiness. That's the Arahant. So they still think, they still remember, they probably remember better than the rest of us. Like Luang Por Ben in Thailand, you go and see him, he can remember when you visited him 30 years ago. Oh yeah, on that day in the monastery there was 16 monks and 3 novices, and that happened and this happened. He said, wow, how can he remember? You can't remember, he can remember. Or Luang Por Opat, when he comes here or sees people, he sees someone in Melbourne 2 years ago and they go and see him again and he said, yeah, so did you get over that problem we were talking about? He knows everything about you, he can remember. Very accurate, very clear memory. That's because he practices mindfulness, samadhi. So he's still got memory, it's just he's not a slave to memory, he's not identifying with it as self. The memory is a function of mind, thought is a function. With mindfulness you can see that, so you have this sense of detached awareness of it. And you're not grasping at it, identifying with it. Last question. When I meditate, always negative, angry thoughts come to my mind. When you say, let it go, I find it hard to forget it easily. When I experience bad things, it stays on in my mind. Could you please suggest to me a method to easily get rid of this kind of thoughts? And how can you let it go when the memory is bothering you again and again? Is there an easy way of doing it, letting go? Well, you just let go. The easy way, that's what Ajahn Chah said when they asked him, what's the easy way to end your suffering? Just let go. If you see it's suffering, let it go. Why keep doing it? We can do it with some things. Nobody puts their hand in fire, do they? Because it's painful. What you've got to do is get to your mindfulness, your understanding and wisdom to the point where it sees if you grasp at a negative thought, it's painful, you're suffering. Let it go. Exactly the same, except for it's a more subtle thing, so you have to be training your mind to see itself, look back at itself, reflect, and see this is painful, let it go. And you get to the point where it's just the same as fire. If you touch fire, you know you're going to be hurt, so you don't touch it. Nobody doubts that, do they? Nobody walks around, should I, shouldn't I, maybe I'll touch fire for a bit today. Nobody does that, do they? But with our mind, oh, that dirty so-and-so, I remember he said that, and I just really want to get him back. And we're quite happy to think all kinds of unwholesome thoughts over and over again. Why? We're just suffering. It's just the same as fire. And the Buddha said it's fire. Greed is fire, anger is fire, delusion is fire. It hurts mentally. But what we tend to do is, like I said, we distract ourselves, we blot it out, we find excuses, we justify it, we just kind of crash on in our lives, keep thinking these same old thoughts, making the same old mistakes. So we have to start sitting down, looking at our mind more closely, being more wise about it, and teaching ourselves, to teach ourselves, let it go. It's painful. As soon as you see the pain, the suffering, well, that's your trigger. Let it go. Give it up. And you replace it with something better. Because if you let go of anger, you're bringing up metta. You let go of greed, you're bringing up contentment, renunciation. You let go of delusion, you're bringing up mindfulness and wisdom. So you're replacing it with something better. Sometimes you consciously focus on the better thing to help let go. So that's one way of doing it. Sometimes you just contemplate the pain of the negative state, and naturally you incline towards the better thing. There's a few different techniques we use. Mindfulness has to be the center of it, because with mindfulness you see the pain and you want to let go. You want to free your mind of that suffering. So it's probably enough for tonight, and we can pay respects to the Triple Gem and carry on practicing.